What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. I bet you clicked on this because you want to know how to make some money. Well, if you're a new woodworking shop or if you've been around for a minute, there's money to be made in cornhole boards. Profit margins are high. You can make them relatively quickly and you can customize them a bunch of different ways. So I'm going to show you how we make our boards. If you haven't checked them out on Instagram at Blue Line Woodworks, you can see a bunch of the boards that we make. We get a lot of them and we keep making them because we make money off of them. So stay tuned, let's get right into the build and start making you some money. All right, y'all, so let's talk about materials for this project. You're gonna need a sheet of plywood. I use 3/4 inch plywood, some people use 1/2 inch. But that's gonna need to be broken down into 2 pieces, cut at 24 inches by 48 inches. I use a track saw, makes it super easy. If you don't have a track saw, use a circular saw, set you up a straight edge, or have them break it down at the home improvement store if you don't have those means. You can also use a table saw, but that's a pain with a full sheet of plywood. You're gonna need 4 2x4s at 8 feet long. Those are gonna be broken down into 4 pieces at 47 7/8 inches, 4 pieces at 20 3/4 inches, and 4 pieces at 12 inches. The 12-inch pieces will be the legs for the cornhole boards. So then you're gonna need some type of pocket hole jig. This one is from Harbor Freight. It's like 60 bucks. Kreg makes them, Armor Tool makes them, but I've used this one for a couple of years and it works pretty good. Pocket hole screws, 1 1/4 inches. I use the Kreg ones. These have been the best that I've used so far. Hardware wise, you're gonna need 4 4-inch 3/8 of an inch bolts. So these bolts, they're 4 inches long, 3/8 in diameter. You can get these at Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards if that's where you are. You're gonna need some washers. You'll need 4 of these as well at 3/8 of an inch. And I like to use these nylon lock nuts because they don't back off. You don't have to use Loctite or anything like that. If you just use regular nuts, they will back off over time by opening and closing the legs. So these work good. You'll need 4 of them as well. Then you're gonna need some way to cut a hole in the boards. A lot of people use a 6-inch diameter hole saw for the drill. I was doing that for a long time. It works pretty good, but it can beat you up, it can hurt your wrist, it can cause some tear out in the board. So I've since switched to just a simple router jig, and I'll show that in the video. But that's what you need as far as materials. If I left anything out, all this will be in the description, like I said. So let's get right into assembling these. So you're gonna put pocket holes in your 4 pieces that are cut at 20 3/4 inches. I just put 2 on each side for a total of 4 in each board. That seems to work out pretty good. And we'll be using some wood glue as well to secure the joint even more. So that's it. These are the only pieces that need pocket hole screws. So now you can put the pocket hole jig aside. You don't need it anymore. So I forgot to mention, when you're at the home improvement store and you're picking out your 2x4s, take your time. Get the straightest boards possible. Because if you get 2x4s that are twisted or they're cupped and warped, your cornhole boards are not gonna turn out good. So take the extra time while you're there, find some good ones. You only need 4 of them, so go through the stack and find you 4 good ones so that they're not all wobbling and all twisted when you put the plywood on. When you assemble them, I use clamps. It makes it way easier. Try to use a level work surface. My workbench is pretty level, so it works good here. But if you haven't used pocket holes before, they will suck into the wood and move it. So clamp it, and that prevents the movement. Time to put the top on. So this is one thing I did forget to mention at the beginning as far as materials. I use 18 gauge brad nails, 2 inches long, to secure the top to the frame. Some guys use screws. If you're gonna use screws, I would recommend countersinking them so that they look nicer. But this and some wood glue works perfectly fine. And the cordless, you gotta love the cordless. Link for this will be in the description as well. So when you lay your plywood top on, you were probably wondering why the cuts were made at 47 7/8 and 20 3/4, because cornhole boards are 24 by 48. Well, you're never gonna get it perfect because you're using 2x4s. So when you cut them just a little bit shorter, you'll have some overhang on the plywood, and we'll go around with a flush trim bit and it makes them look perfect. So that's why. So when you're putting your plywood top on, just make sure you got a little bit of overhang everywhere so that you can use a flush trim bit and knock it all away. So I use brad nails because of the design that we do on the cornhole boards. The stain pattern that we use covers up all those tiny holes. Even if we weren't doing that stain pattern, you'd barely be able to see the holes, but some people use pocket holes going from the bottom or countersink screws from the top. It's all personal preference and what look you're going for. So now that this is on, I'm gonna flip it over, let it sit, let that glue dry a little bit, and frame up the second one. Alrighty, so the plywood is secured to the frame. You've given it some time to dry. Now it's time to flush trim it. I'm just gonna be using a 1-inch flush trim bit. This is a Freud bit. This is unplugged, by the way. I wouldn't be messing with it if it was plugged in. So just gonna make a pass all the way around each board, and that will get all of these edges nice and clean and flush, and then we'll move on to the next step. Eye Pro and Ear Pro is a must for this because the dust goes everywhere and it's super loud. So now these edges are super clean. Let's see if, I mean, that is flush right there. So there's a couple of like frizzy pieces here. That's okay, don't worry about it right now. Because if you're painting these and staining them, you're gonna be sanding this to 220 before you do any of that, and that will get rid of that stuff. So on to the next one, and I'll catch you at the next step. Now that the boards are all flush trimmed, it's time to take the legs. These are the 12-inch pieces that you cut. And if you have a combination square, it makes it super easy. You don't need it though, you can just use a tape measure. And you're gonna wanna measure 1 3/4 inches down, like here. And then 1 3/4 from the side. So that you have a spot right in the middle of the leg towards the upper part. This is gonna be the top. That's gonna be up right there. So this mark is gonna be where the drill bit is gonna go in to this leg and the board so that that 4-inch bolt can fit through. So go and mark 1.75 down, 1.75 over on all 4 of the 12-inch pieces. Once you have all 4 pieces marked, decide which section of your board you want to be the top. So I usually base it off grain pattern and based on the logo that we're going to be painting on it to determine which side I want to be the top. So just pick a side and we're going to flip it over, and the legs are going to go towards the top for the side that you picked to be the top. So on this one I got this like little line going through right here, but there's a lot of crazy grain pattern up there, so I think I'm going to keep that as the top and this will be the bottom. So I'm going to spin this around. So this is the top part of the board. I'm going to take 2 of these legs, and the marks with the X's here, those are going to be on the inside, and butt them all the way up to the 2x4. So let me go ahead and show you right here. So you want to butt it all the way into the corner right here. Clamp this and we'll drill the hole. So you're going to want to make sure you got the 3/8 of an inch drill bit loaded up in your drill. Now I've made a lot of cornhole boards. I have this little scrap piece that I clamp to the outside so that when I drill through I don't get any tear out. So just having this extra material on the side is a nice little trick that I use through trial and error that works extremely well and makes your end project look better. So you just want to clamp that up there. And now we can drill right on through. So at this point, another thing that helps me out is I just mark these legs, right? So I come in here and right below those holes, I just mark an X so I know that that is the inside. And then on here, facing the board, I'll just put an R on this one for right and an L on this one for left. So that just makes sure that when I take these to the miter saw and cut them, that I can keep my orientation and make sure everything ends up back to where it's supposed to be. So you have a hole that is 1.75 inches down. A lot of people will round this corner, right? But you gotta make sure you get it right so that it doesn't hit the plywood. I just chop it off. Chop it here, and it's done, and it works just fine. Nobody cares if you have a rounded edge here or if it's chopped with some angles. Nobody sees it, it's under the board. So I'm gonna go do this on the miter saw and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. All right, so here's what it looks like, just like I said, chopped off. So there'll be a washer on here anyway, so that'll make this nice and secure. I run the bolts through here just to make sure that this moves smoothly and that the legs are even on the back. So I mean, if you have a bandsaw or a jigsaw and you want to use an extra tool to make a rounded end, by all means do it, but I've found this is way easier and it's pretty much, you can't jack it up. So legs are cut, working mechanically. Now it's time to put the hole in the top of the cornhole board. So I have this little jig right here made out of MDF. If you don't have a jig and you're going to use a hole saw, you just want to measure, 12 inches across to find the middle of your board and then down 9 inches from the top. Put a mark and that's going to be the center of your circle. So that's all this jig is. It's 9 inches down and I have a line right here that I just line up with the bottom of the board. Throw a 3/4 inch drill bit through and then I just sit that flush trim bit around and holes cut out in 2 seconds. Super clean finish. I highly recommend if you're going to be making a lot of cornhole boards, just make a router jig. I wish I did it a lot sooner, but it's super easy and you get better results than the hole saw. Now that the holes are cut out, there's really just one more step in the actual structural build of the cornhole boards, and that's to cut the legs at the right angle so that the top of the board sits up approximately 12 inches off the ground. Now, I don't make regulation cornhole boards for like tournaments and stuff. So mine actually sit up like 12 1/4 inches because I used a 3/4 inch plywood. But my customers are not cornhole tournament players. They like to drink beer in their backyard and have barbecues with their friends or tailgate. So that's my clientele. So I build them like this. They're a little bit more rugged. They can take more abuse. But if you want them to be that regulation 12 inches, use 1/2 inch plywood. But to get these legs cut, you're just gonna need a paint can. You're gonna flip the board over and put that paint can right in the center. Now this is where it helps to have a big workbench, because I'm gonna put the legs in here and I'm just gonna hang one off of the edge of the table and scribe a line. And that's gonna be my angle, and I'll do the same thing on the opposite leg, and then the legs, I'll cut them and I'll fit them in here and they'll be good to go. So if you don't have a big workbench, it's usually around like a 10 to 15 degree angle, but get it up on something flat where you can put a paint can underneath and just mark the legs, because it works every time and there's no math involved. You just scribe a line, cut it, and it's done. So that's what I'm gonna do. There are my 2 lines. No math required. And because you're using 2x4s and pine plywood, they're not always going to be perfect, and they're going to have a little warp or twist in them. So doing it this way, if you go by a plan on the internet, I promise you, and it's hot, but you're going to get frustrated because they're going to tell you to cut it at like 11 3/4 inches. You're going to do that and you're going to put them on, and then the boards are going to wobble all over the place. So just do it this way. All right, y'all, so structurally the boards are done, but I'm going to sand them at 220 just to prep them for staining. It makes the stain look better. So I'm gonna do that. I'll get them all stained up and everything, and prior to them being painted, I'll come back and we'll talk about this some more. But you could sell these boards right here, just how they are. Not primed, not stained, not painted, and you can make money off of it. You're gonna make more if you just take that extra step to stain and paint them, but people will buy them like this because then they can customize them themselves and paint them and do all kinds of crazy stuff. So right here, that didn't take very long. You can sell that. So I got the boards all laid out ready for stain. I use a framing square to lay out my design, and then I'll use frog tape. That's this green tape. Spend the few extra bucks to use this instead of painter's tape. Your lines will be way cleaner and the end result looks a lot better. This is the design that I use on all my boards unless specifically requested for something else. And if somebody requests something else, I charge a little extra. You gotta keep your stuff like standardized if you wanna make money off of it. Because I can batch this out, I don't even have to think about it. I know exactly what I'm doing. So keep that in mind when people ask you like, well, can you paint this a bunch of crazy colors or one color, or because then you have to buy a bunch of different paint, stain, all that kind of stuff. On a project as simple as cornhole boards, let the design be what is custom, whether it's a vinyl decal, painting, that kind of deal. Make it easier on yourself and pick one stain pattern that you like and that your customers seem to like, and stick with that. That way you know exactly your costs associated with that, how much time it's going to take you, and then you can charge appropriately. So these are ready for stain. I'm going to be using gel stain, Minwax gel stain. Again, it just makes the lines way cleaner. It's a little bit more expensive, but well worth it in my opinion. So I'm going to get these stained, and once it dries and I'm ready to peel the frog tape off, I'll show you what it looks like, and you can decide if you want to use regular stain, gel stain, frog tape, blue tape. You can make the decision, but I'm gonna get to that and get these ready for painting. Sorry. All right, y'all saw how clean the lines are. Minwax gel stain. This specific color is hickory. I apply it with one of these little shop towels. It's a little heavier duty paper towel. That's it. You don't have to buy synthetic brushes. You don't have to use foam brushes. Save your money. Just use this. That's why sanding it down to 220 helps as well, because then the towel doesn't get all tore up because it's nice and smooth. So, all right, y'all, the boards are done, ready for paint. So Jamie's gonna use her Cricut stencil cutter to cut out a vinyl design. She'll paint it. She does it in layers. I don't have the patience for it. She does an amazing job with the painting, so I let her handle that. Once she's done with that, they'll come back out here and they're gonna get finished with Minwax polycrylic. It's a water-based clear coat. That way it doesn't change the color of any of this or any of the painting that is done. If you're not worried about ambering, just use an oil-based clear coat. It doesn't matter, but it is gonna slightly change the color of your boards. So once the clear coat's on there, they'll be done. I do mount some lights that go onto the underside here and just light up the hole so that you can play at night. I'll leave a link in the description for those on my Amazon store. They're like $21-ish, I think, but it's a nice touch. And a lot of times people are playing cornhole in low light conditions for barbecues, backyard events, that kind of stuff. So that's it. Start selling them. You're gonna make money. They're not like the most fun thing to make. Jamie gets to do the fun part and make them come alive with the design, but people keep ordering them and we make money off of them, so we're gonna keep making them. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell, give me a thumbs up, all that good stuff. And if you have any questions, maybe I forgot to cover something, please leave a comment or just give me some feedback and I'll get back to you guys as soon as I can. And to see what design is put on this, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Blue Line Woodworks and you can see how these turned out. See ya.